بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبا القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل لا أسألكم عليه أجرا إلا المودة في القربى. The first of our salawat in honor of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. The second in honor of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. The third, with your loudest voices, in honor of the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Amongst the most deceiving myths in Islamic history regards the marriages of Imam Hassan salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. This myth has been spread into many books, into many journals, into many articles. And the myth stipulates the idea that Imam Hassan was a man who would constantly get married and get divorced, and that he was seen as being a habitual divorcer, a person who would take the daughters of the people and then divorce them. This myth reached an extent which stated that the Imam would marry 4 women in one sitting and then divorce 4 women in the same sitting. And unfortunately the myth was able to spread, because as we know very well, a myth is like a virus. When it spreads in a community, it is able to destroy the very fabric of that community. You find that when a virus spreads in a community, it is vital that a person is not only able to point out the virus, but also is able to cure it, to remove it from the plaguing the society. Likewise, a myth can have the same effect, where a person is able to reach a conclusion about a life of a personality and attribute to them an action which they didn't perform. That's why you find, unfortunately, in many Islamic circles in the world today, when a book is published regarding the biography of the Imam, on many occasions the conclusion states that the Imam was unfortunately a man who was fond of ease and fond of quiet, as well as a man with a lustful nature. You find that within this propaganda aimed at destroying the image of the Imam, there are narrations which state that in his lifetime he married 70 women. And you find at the same time that there is a narration which even goes up to 300 women. That the Imam was a man who in his lifetime was willing to marry and divorce and marry and divorce. And that on the day that he died, his wives all came out to his funeral in Medina, and 70 of them called out, "We are wailing, for our husband has now passed away." You find when you have such narrations, there is a need for us to examine them in depth, because you find that the ladies who have been associated with the Imam are many. For example, Bashir bin Abi Mas'ud al-Khazraji is associated as being a wife of the Imam. Khawla al-Fazariya is seen as being a wife of the Imam. Ju'da, the daughter of al-Ash'ath ibn Qais, is seen as a wife of the Imam. Ishaq, the daughter of Abu Talha, is seen as being a wife of the Imam. You find, for example, Hind, who was originally a servant in the house of Ahlul Bayt, is seen as being a wife of the Imam. A lady by the name of Aisha is seen as being a wife of the Imam. You find Al-Minqariya is seen as being a wife of the Imam. Many wives were attributed to the Imam. That anyone who goes and studies these books and these narratives will find that they could not focus on any aspect of the life of the Imam except his marriages. And that's why tonight's examination seeks to look at the myth of the divorces and marriages of Imam Hassan. Because there is a need for us to study this for a couple of reasons. On the first level, you find that whenever you hear a scandal about any member in the community, there is a need for us to defend that person, to verify the truth. On many occasions when we hear scandals about people's marriages, or we hear scandals about people's divorces, you find that many of us will listen to one wicked person and form a conclusion. Whereas the reality in the religion of Islam is that there is a need for the Muslim to verify the news when they receive it. And there is a need for a Muslim that when he hears a scandal about someone's biography, that they are able to alleviate this scandal from tarnishing their image. Number two, the verse which I stated at the beginning of my lecture states, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى, that the Prophet states, I do not ask from you anything except love for my family. A sign of love for this family is to defend them against any scandalous attack that is posited against them. As in any attack that is posited against the human, we have to defend, let alone the grandson of the Holy Prophet and the master of the youth of paradise. There is a need for us to defend on this second level. On the third level, when people ask, how do we prepare for the return of the Imam? We reply by stating you have to pledge your allegiance to the Imam. One way of pledging your allegiance to the Imam is by defending his grandfather's reputation. Because at the end of the day, when I want to pledge the allegiance to the Imam of my time, I can write an article in defense of his grandfather. I can write a book in defense of his grandfather. The shame in the followers of the school of Ahlul Bayt is that while many of them are good with their tongues, there's very few who are strong with their pens. And the hadith states, the ink of the scholar is greater than the blood of the martyr. When you come to dissect a topic like this, such a topic like this shouldn't just be a lecture, it should become a book. In order that we are able to reply back to these accusations, only a couple of weeks ago on an international Islamic channel, when they were discussing the biography of the Imam, the person discussed his whole biography and then said, Imam al-Hassan cannot be compared to Muawiyah. Why? Because Muawiyah, while he only stayed with a couple of wives in his life, for example like Maysun al-Kilabiyah, Imam al-Hassan married 70 women. Therefore a man like Imam al-Hassan cannot be respected as much as Muawiyah. When a person hears such a statement, it's not just enough to be sad or to be angry. We have to know how to intellectually and academically dissect the topic in depth. And that's what I'll seek to do tonight with the following questions. Number one, can a prophet or an imam ever reach the stage of divorce, or is it forbidden for them? Number two, why do academics who are non-Muslims look down at Imam al-Hassan, and what's their mentality when they look down at him? Number three, who are the three main authors in Islamic history whose books called Imam a divorcer? And how do we reply to these three? Number four, what role did al-Mansur al-Dawaniqi have in the attack on Imam al-Hassan's character? And number five, of the utmost importance, which legacy did Imam al-Hassan leave behind in his life which made the writers envious of his legacy? Let's examine this and dissect the topic in depth. When a person hears of an imam divorcing, people automatically raise the question, can an imam or a prophet ever be in a situation of divorce? You say to them, what do you mean? They say, well, a prophet or an imam is a great personality. Surely they'll never reach a stage in their life where a wife may be troublesome for them, that they would end up in divorce. That type of argument is ridiculous. Why? Because a prophet or an imam at the end of the day is a human like ourselves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests them in the way He tests us. Sometimes you may be tested with your family. Sometimes you're tested with your wealth. Sometimes you're tested with your health. Sometimes you're tested with your children. Likewise, the prophets of Allah and the imams are also tested in these same areas. Many prophets of God, you will find, had excellent relationship with their wives, where they would not reach a stage at all where divorce would even be contemplated.